Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hudson Hill. You are watching Youth Quality Assurance. Hi, this is Hudson Hill. You're watching Youth Quality Assurance number 2A. This video comes from you from a team of a Zoom team with Bridger Fates from Uinta County, Hudson Hill from Lincoln County, and Shar Perry from Uinta County. You're watching Quality Assurance. And as we get started here, the way this class is going to work is we'll go through a part of the class, and it'll be kind of a review to see if you remember the things we really want you to remember from year one. There'll be some questions. You want to make sure we'll go through the questions. You want to make sure you'll go through the questions with us. Write the answers down, and that'll be, about a third of the way through. Then we'll really start into managing animals. About halfway through, we'll show you a video. A little further along, we'll have another set of questions we'll go through, and at the end, there'll be an assignment for you to do. So as we go into 2B, we really need to remind ourselves what is quality assurance. As we think about quality, quality is really a frame of mind. You can have both good and bad quality. But as we're taking our animals to the fair and selling them in our livestock sales, we're really promising that the products that come from our animals are going to be safe and healthy, and they're going to be good tasting. That the assurance part of that is really a pledge or a promise to the people who are buying our animals. We're really making a promise that we're going to do what we can do to make sure as we bring animals to the livestock sale at our fairs, that it's going to be quality, and we're going to promise that. So as we go on, the food from our livestock will be the highest possible quality, and we will do everything we can to make these products safe to eat. And it's regardless of how many animals you raise, what species or breed you are producing food, it's going to end up on somebody's table. And I really always like to remind the 4-H youth as we go through these classes in our counties that you are producers. It's a big deal. There's a lot of food that comes out of these sales at our fairs, and it is important, and their part in that is also important. So as we go along, let's review year one and the first classes that you went through. As we went through year one, we talked about how important it was to identify our animals, and why. We really want to be able to have a proof of ownership for our animals. Animals get out, they get lost, sometimes they even get stolen. As we go through, being able to have an identification of our animals, to record what medications that animal has had, and when, and in future classes, you're going to see why that's so important. And really, it's about good management. I really talked to a lot of 4-H kids about how many days are left before fair, how much weight that animal's gaining, how much the animal weighs, and we really want to be able to have all that information so that we can keep track and know how our project's going for the year. So in the one level, we talked a lot about feed. And when we talk about feed, we really want to be able to read a feed label. All the purchased feeds that we purchase will have a list of ingredients, a feed analysis, how much to feed, who the manufacturer was, excuse me. Some feeds might even have medication in them, and if they do, that will be on the label. So the label would also tell us if it could be legally fed to the animals. the medication that's in the feed, and any warnings and withdrawal time of feed. If we're feeding animals, it's important to understand how to see the feed label and how to read it. Withdrawal time is really something important to understand as you are livestock producers. If any animal gets any type of drug, medicine, we need to know whether that medicine has a withdrawal time. The withdrawal time is the time from when an animal receives a drug to when it can be harvested or when the milk can be used without having any drug residue in it. Of course, as you go through further classes, we're going to talk a lot about the label that's on the drug. If we follow the label, we're going to be okay. Residue is the portion of the medication that may remain in the animal's body tissues. So, of course, with our 4-H livestock projects, we want to really be able to use the highest quality feeds we can. We want to do certain things. We want to meet certain goals with our animals. And the first goal we probably need to meet is to meet the nutritional needs. Of course, we want it clean. We want it free of wire, manure, mold, anything else, candy wrappers or cans. We want clean feed. We need it properly stored. If feed isn't stored dry and clean, we'll get mold, we'll get other things. We need to keep it away from rodents and other animals. And we really don't want our feed to be too old. Feed can go stale. And if it goes stale, the animals just won't want to eat it as much. So water, I talk with 4-H kids about water probably being, one of the first things they really need to think about. We always need to have plenty of clean, fresh water. Animals will die in 1 to 3 days without water, and of course we don't want that happening. But really, without good, fresh, clean water, our animals aren't going to stay healthy. They're not going to gain like we want them to, and they're not going to be ready for that quality assurance guarantee that we're going to try to pledge to our buyers when they come to the livestock sale at fair. So a shortage of poor quality water will affect performance. A really good rule of thumb is that for every 100 pounds of animal you need a gallon of water. So if you've got a 200-pound pig, they're going to drink at least 2 gallons of water a day. If you've got a 1,000-pound steer, that 1,000-pound steer is going to drink at least 10 gallons a day. And of course, we don't want to only give that steer 10 gallons. We want it to have 10 gallons plus, so it'll stay cool and clean, and he'll always be able to have a drink when he needs it. So housing is one of the first things that they talked about in level 1 of these classes. Housing is really important. We really want to take good care of our animals. Our pens shouldn't be overcrowded. There should be plenty of room. We want to have clean pens with dry bedding. Of course, we don't want anything that could harm the animal, any nails sticking out or sharp objects sticking out. We want clean feed bunks and water, feed bunks that are the appropriate size. Animals really do need enough room to eat and to be able to get in. So, one of the best things we can do when we're thinking about housing is really think about protecting our animals from the weather. We want them to be able to protect it from the sun, so we want shade. If it's too hot, we can have fans, misters, and added shelters. In Wyoming, wind's probably one of those things we really want to think about protecting them from. So really, when we get started with our livestock projects, one of the best things to do is think about prevention. We want to do all of the things we can do to make sure we don't have problems. So we want to prevent problems before they happen. Make sure to discuss with your family, teach your family about quality assurance and the things you've learned in these classes and the things that they need to understand as they go throughout the project with you. Make sure you maintain IDs. Make sure you can keep track of your animal and know which animal it is. Keep records. Know when you bought your animal, when the animal's had any kind of shots and drugs. Make sure you keep track of how much they weighed when you bought them and any time in between that you can get to a scale and take care of that. Really watch for signs of illness. As you get to know your animals, you'll know how they act. If they're lethargic, if their ears are down, if they just don't have that spark. If you spend time with your animals, you'll be able to tell if they're not feeling good or not. And of course, avoid contamination of feeds. Keep lids on them. keep water out of them, and keep them fresh. So really, avoid the things that can cause you problems. And remember, as we talk about quality assurance, it's really your job. It's the 4-H members' job as a producer to affect what they do, and it really is a big deal. What can the 4-H member affect? They can affect the safety and quality of the food supply. That food supply is going directly into your neighbors and the people in your community. You can also affect consumers' image of the livestock industry. If somebody has a bad experience with the sale, they might not come back the next year. They might not tell their friends and their neighbors to come back. They might not want that product again, and that's important. And then the last thing, the image of the youth livestock programs. We don't want to do anything to have people say, boy, that 4-H program's not the program that's raising our youth, because we know that 4-H program is one of the best programs around. So here's the first set of questions that you need to answer during this class. So there's 5 of them. The first question: who is responsible for quality assurance? And hopefully I made it really clear who I expect that, or what answer I expect on number 1 there. The 4-H member. The 4-H member is responsible for quality assurance. Of course, their friends, their family can certainly help with that. But the 4-H member is getting the certificate. They're the one taking that animal to the livestock sale, and they're the ones that's making that promise. I've done what I can to have this product good. Can you name a type of animal ID? And hopefully all of you could. There's lots of them. There's tattoos, there's ear notches, there's tags, there's neck chains, there's multiple different types of animal IDs. So list something you might find on a feed tag. In our review, we talked about several things, a list of ingredients, whether it's medicated or not. You'll also, to be able to find out how much protein's in it, and that other information. So number 4 is a true or false question. Withdrawal time is not important. I hope everybody answered false on that. Withdrawal time is incredibly important. Withdrawal time is basically how long it takes for the residue of the drug to get out of the animal's body. They can test and do test for drug residues in animals in slaughterhouses, and so withdrawal time is very important. So number 5, an easy question: how many days can an animal go without water? Earlier in the slides, we talked about 1 to 3, and of course, we wouldn't want them to go an hour without water, because that'll just hurt how much game they have. It'll add stress, create opportunities for them to not feel as well and to get sick. So there's the first set of questions, and we'll go on with the presentation. So this presentation is really about animal handling, and it's my personal favorite one to teach. It's my personal one to work with the youth on, because it's really the one where they can really start thinking about animals and how animals act and how they can manage them. One of the things that I really like to stress in this class is that if you really understand animal handling, if you really understand why animals are going to do what they do, if you really understand, how animals react to different things you do, boy, it'll make your project better. It will absolutely make you a better showman. You'll be able to train your animals quicker, faster. There will be less stress on your animals. All those things will go better in your livestock project if you really take the things that I'm going to go through here in just the next few minutes, take them home and try to apply them at your house with your animals. So let's get started. The first thing, and this is really an important thing to understand about animal handling principles, is that animals have differences in sight. Animals see different than humans. In a minute we'll see a video, but but animals absolutely have differences in sight. The next thing is we're going to really talk about the flight zone. All animals have a flight zone, whether they're, you know, a really tame animal that you have at home or a wild animal in the forest. They all have a flight zone. And it's important to realize that animals' eyes are different and their blind spot's different. But we'll talk about the blind spot. The blind spot is important when we start talking about animal handling and doing the right things with our animals. So this slide is really a good one to think. This slide's really a good one to think about and to see. The circle that you see here is the animal's flight zone. And then this colored in spot, the blue spot, is the blind zone. And you can see the red arrows. That's where the blind zone's at. I usually ask kids when I'm in class with them, I'm like, who knows somebody who's been kicked by a horse? And I ask them, well, why did they get kicked by a horse? And every one of them says, well, they scared them. They were behind them. They snuck up behind them. They didn't know they were there. That's always the answers you get. And so then I clicked this slide up and I said, were they in this blue spot? Were they here with the horse? And they all say, yeah. And so we talk about the blind spot. We talk about that the animals cannot see you if they're there. And so if you suddenly appear in that blind spot or suddenly touch them from that blind spot, they didn't know you were there. It causes stress. It causes them to flight. It scares them. You might get kicked. They might run. There's all kinds of things that can happen with that blind spot. Understanding that blind spot when you're working with your animals, trimming your animals, washing your animal, training your animal is really an important thing. So there is a difference in sight. Animals have a wide angle vision. Animals can see everything except what is directly behind them. The area where they can't see is the blind spot. Remember that. So animals have flight zones. They have basically a comfort zone. You know, a lot of school kids know that as a bubble. It's their personal bubble. If people come into that bubble or that comfort zone, you know, it makes them uncomfortable. It's the same thing with an animal. If you enter the animal's comfort zone, they get uncomfortable and they do certain things. So when a person moves into the comfort zone, it makes the animal tense up, they get nervous, and they move away. And so the flight zone is really important to think about and understand for two reasons. Are there times when we want animals to move? Sure. We need to herd animals. We need to put animals certain places. In the show ring, we need animals to move. So if we understand the flight zone, it'll make us better showmen in the show ring. But remember, you know, we want to enter the flight zone in a way that we're managing animals, not scaring animals. So the differences in sight, one of the differences, and I think this difference is really important, is depth perception. Animals do not have very good or any depth perception sometimes. And that really means they can't tell how far away something is. So if they don't have depth perception, every shadow, every dark spot, every light reflection, any changing surface, any unfamiliar place might frighten them. And you know, it's really important to understand this. Why is it so hard to get animals to load on a trailer, especially pigs? Well, you know, why is it so hard to get those pigs to step in that trailer? Well, they see that spot underneath the trailer. They don't know how deep it is. It scares them. And animals are naturally afraid, neophobic of things. They're naturally afraid of things because that's the way, you know, they evolved. The things that they didn't know, they weren't comfortable with, they didn't do, so they didn't die. So depth perception is really important to understand with our animals. Here's a little video that I put together showing one of the things I really like to do with 4-H youth to help them understand how their animals are seeing different. I want everybody after this to try this little game or this little trick that I show in this video because it'll really help you understand what your animals are doing as you're trying to train them to get ready for fair. When we're talking about managing animals, one of the most important things that we can understand is the way an animal sees. So mammals have two different kinds of eyes. There are prey eyes and predator eyes.
course, humans have predator eyes. Like a wolf, they're able to go out, they're able to grab it, they're able to see it and get it. That's what allows us to catch the ball. One of my favoriteest things to do with 4-H youth, talking about livestock management, is to get a really nice, easy to catch ball and play catch with them for a minute. You just stand back 5 or 6 feet, have them get ready, and just catch the ball. Throw back. Most 4-H youth can, after a few tries, catch the ball really easy, and most of them will catch it just the first time. And so then what you ask them to do is cover one eye. You cover one eye, please. Now please catch the ball. Let's try it again. Keep that eye covered. And almost every time it takes 5 or 6 tries before the youth realizes that their depth perception is gone. And the point is, when we're working with our livestock projects, cows, sheep, pigs, they don't have predator eyes. They have prey eyes, so they don't have depth perception. So every dark spot, every shadow, every break in between a fence, those are really scary to our livestock projects. So as we're training our projects and we're thinking about blind spots, we're thinking about the way animals react to stuff, it's really important that we know that animals don't have depth perception. You know, one of the hardest things to do is get a pig to load onto a trailer. The reason is because that little spot under the trailer is really scary for them because they don't really understand how deep it is. Depth perception is really important to understand in our 4-H livestock projects. Try this with a friend. It's really fun to think about. This is Hudson Hill with University of Wyoming Extension.
So I really like that video, and I really encourage the youth to go out and try that experience because it's good for them to understand how difficult it is to manage the world without depth perception. You know, I always tease them, you can't play catch with your lambs, and that's why. You know, the example that I like to use is everybody knows why a cattle guard works, right? The cows walk up to it. They don't want to stick their legs through. But isn't it interesting that we can go out right on pavement and just draw lines and the cattle still walk up and look at those lines and they won't step because they can't tell how far it is between the lines. It works the same as having a big old trench underneath pipes. So depth perception is really important as we are working with our youth, as our youth are working with their livestock projects, because it can really help them. It can really help the youth get their animals used to their surroundings, bring them home, understand what they're seeing, and just remember, anytime that you're trying to train your animal to do something, the important thing is that the animal has the experience, and it's a positive experience, and you know. And they'll do the experience better next time. So don't wait till the day of fair to load your pigs for the first time. You know, don't wait till the last day before fair to train your animals to do the things that you're going to need to do at fair. So there is a relation between the 3 things of the flight zone, the blind spot, and depth perception. You know, we use them together to really manage the animal, to get them to move, to not get them to move, and do the things that we want to do. So here's some other animal handling principles that we really need to think about. Cattle, swine, and sheep are herd animals. They prefer to live in a group. They like to be with their buddies, right? They don't like to be alone. One of the animal handling principles that's really important to talk about is bruising animals. Bruising animals must be avoided, and it can be caused by rough handling, nails and sharp objects. It can really affect the quality and value of the carcass. Bruises must be cut away and discarded, and it can really affect animals' performance. If the bruise is deep enough, it's sore enough, the animal doesn't get up as often, it doesn't get to the feed bunk as often, doesn't get to drink as often, and you know, that animal's not going to gain weight and perform like we really want it to get ready for fair. I really like to talk about bruising right after I talk about the flight zone. Most bruises that animals get, not necessarily just 4-H animals, but all animals in the livestock industry, get those bruises when they're being worked, on trailers, getting on and off trailers, going up alleyways. And so really think about this as you're thinking about the flight zone. When we enter the flight zone of an animal, what does it do? It moves away. Well, if we enter that flight zone fast enough or scary enough, that animal moves away really fast until it bangs on the fence on the other side. Well, think about, a 1,000-pound steer moving that fast and banging into the fence. That's the kind of thing where bruises really come from, and why it's so important to think about that flight zone of an animal and how we use it accordingly to move animals and to train our animals for fair. Bruising in animals is a little different than it is in humans. I usually ask the kids, how long does it take you to get over a bruise? It's usually just 2 or 3 days, certainly within a week. But those bruises in animals, if they hit hard enough to bruise, quite often it can take 60 to 90 days. That's 3 months, folks, for the bruise and the muscle tissue to heal. And if the animals go to the slaughterhouse, the packing plant with bruises, it looks like this. Certainly not something that's edible we want to use, so it actually has to be cut out and thrown away. So it's not something we want to have in our animals and our animal projects. So when we work on avoiding bruising, we handle animals gently and calmly, especially using the knowledge that we've gained about how animals see, the flight zone, their depth perception, and their blind spot. Certainly we would avoid hitting an animal. We don't hit animals. Be careful and avoid, we don't dehorn goats, avoid bruising, and only use electrical prods on non-meat areas. So when we avoid bruising, if the animal will not move, we don't hit the animal, but we might tap the animal with the sorting paddle. In this slide, you can see the places on the animal where we would touch. We tap on the lower value parts of the carcass. They're the blue values, right? The high values are up here in the yellow. When we're showing pigs, when we're moving cattle, we're touching the animal down here in these lower value areas. So there are some things not to do. When we think about that flight zone, how we enter it and how we use it, we don't yell or scream. We don't use electric prods. We don't hit the animals with boards or other hard objects. So we're to our second set of questions, our last set of questions. And number 6 is true or false? All animals have a flight zone. I hope everybody was immediately able to answer true on that. All animals have a flight zone. It's just smaller or bigger depending on the experiences they've had in their life. It's really interesting to go up around Jackson Hole during the wintertime and see the elk on the feed grounds. During the wintertime when they're feeding those elk, boy, that flight zone's pretty small, isn't it? Maybe even 100 feet. We can get 100 feet from them elk because they're there, they're being fed. In the summertime, that flight zone gets out there more like a mile, far as the animal can see. And that just comes from the experiences the animals have. When we talk about 4-H youth bringing their animals home, it's really important that every day we work on getting that flight zone smaller and smaller and smaller, but the animal always will have a flight zone. So number 7, question number 7. Are sheep herd animals? Of course, the answer is yes. Sheep and all these animals are herd animals. As we start training them and managing them, we can practice, especially with sheep, getting them ready for fair. If we're feeding 2 sheep together, which most of us probably are, we know that when we take one sheep out of the pen and head for the show ring, it's going to make both of those sheep nervous. It's going to make the sheep harder to show. And it's going to make the sheep that we left in the barn make a lot of noise, right? And so we can practice that. We can actually give those sheep a good experience while they're at home separating them for a little while, nothing bad happening, and bringing them back together, and they'll be less stressed the next time we have to do it at fair. So number 8, do animals have good depth perception? So as you know, the answer is no. Animals don't have depth perception. You know, our livestock projects for fair don't have depth perception, and we can use that as we manage our animals, train our animals. So question number 9, if you are in front of an animal's point of balance, what will it do? So this question goes back to the flight zone, and I talked about entering the flight zone of an animal, and that's what the point of balance was. Depending on where you enter the flight zone, that animal is going to move in that direction. So if we want an animal to move one way, we enter the flight zone here, that's the point of balance, and it will enter the other way. So the answer to that question is if you are in front of an animal's point of balance, it will move in the opposite direction. Do animals have wide or narrow vision? As we've talked about it, animals have really wide angle of vision, so they can see, and so they can see things that are going to come at them. They have a wide angle of vision. So that's question 6 through 10, and we'll move on. So as we move on, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about carcass quality a little bit. And carcass quality really moves back to, you know, our animal management and how that's gone. And so poor meat quality related to stressed animals is something we're going to really talk about now. We're going to talk about abscesses, how they happen and how we can work on it. And we'll mention tenderness. Tenderness problems related to abscesses and injection techniques. So we're gonna visit those 3 things about carcass quality, because through our animal management and our handling, we can certainly affect meat quality, abscesses, and tenderness that go along with abscesses. So is meat quality a problem? It sure can be. There are still in our industry, in the meat industry, meat quality problems. And so here's some pictures of a beef. When a beef looks like this, the one on the left here, they call it a dark cutter. It's when meat is dark, red, almost black. It is acceptable to eat, but most consumers don't like the appearance. So when they get a dark cutter in the slaughterhouse, you know, it doesn't go in the same stream. It's not as good, but that color is completely related to stress. And it's interesting to think about this stress, since we just went through all those animal handling principles. You know, did this animal get stressed because of the flight zone? The flight zone was entered into too fast, too many times, chased around, that kind of thing. Had it just not had the right experiences? You know, there's lots of things about the animal management that could have protected this animal from getting so stressed that this meat got this dark. So in pork, there's 2 different things. DFD, dark, firm, and dry pork. You know, this is a dark, firm, and dry pork ham right here, a DFD ham. You can see in this example that it certainly doesn't look as good as this one, certainly not worth as much as this one, and it has less quality than this pork. And, you know, this is caused from stress, too much stress on the animal. And again, you know, it's animal management stuff. You know, it could be the animal had gotten too thirsty, too hungry, too cold, too hot, and probably for sure too stressed. In pork, there's also PSC, pale, soft, and exudative pork. This is a PSC ham, and again, we can see it's not dark anymore, but boy, we can see that the quality is way left. It's soft, it's squishy, the texture is not what people want to eat. This is the texture that people want to eat. And again, all these things are related to how we're handling and managing the animals. So here's your assignment for this part of YQA, the 2A part. In the assignment, we want you to complete the daily care and management table. And after completing the assignment, return it to the extension office to receive credit for passing this level of quality assurance, and that's 2A. Again, I really enjoy this particular part of YQA. I really think that animal management can make us a lot better showmen. It can really help us with our livestock projects, and I really like doing this class. So your YQA Zoom team, Bridger Fates from Uinta County. I'm Hudson Hill with Lincoln County. And Shar Perry, you'll see her in a lot of the videos and some of the lessons, and probably already have. Really glad you were able to do the class today. Good luck at fair and good luck with your livestock projects in the future. Bye-bye. I don't know how long did I was thinking it took too long. Did I go fast?
Did you stop the recording?
I did.
All right.
So we're gonna have to do it again.
Why?
That one video says to use electric prods.
The one
Slide.
Yeah, we don't have to do it. You just told them, right?
Well,
This is from George.
It says only use electric prods with non-meat animals. And then in 3 slides it says don't ever use electric prods.